Good morning. My name's Alex Cornell-DeHue, and I'm president of Elected Officials to Protect America. Thank you so much for joining us this morning for our press conference on the Bbba and its importance to support our environment. Elected Officials to Protect America is a coalition of lawmakers who care deeply about protecting our land and waters, environmental justice, and combating the climate crisis. And the Bbba really encompasses all three. And this is why it's so important that we pass this piece of legislation and that Senator Schumer puts it to a vote. And of course, we need to encourage Senator Manchin to vote for this piece of legislation, which is why lawmakers from both West Virginia and New York are coming together to encourage these two individuals, but and broadly too, to show what the solutions are, the solutions in their districts and across America that are so important that are coming out from Bbba to combat the climate crisis, encourage environmental justice, and protect our land and waters. So with that, I'd love to start out with Council Member Kriesel, and she'll kick us off.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Alex. My name is Kriesel. I am a town councilor in the town of Manlius, which is a town of about 35,000 people just outside of Syracuse, New York, in upstate New York. And I am also a member of the Leadership Council for Elected Officials to Protect New York. And I'm really excited to be here today. In the town of Manlius, there have been opportunities and interest in things like electric vehicles, geothermal and heat pumps, solar panels on your roof. We've got the electrification of our economy, of our buildings, of our houses, and transportation, heating. How do we get off of fossil fuels? And that we know is critically important for the future of our planet, for the future of our communities. My town, we're seeing the effects of climate change every single day. Here we are a week before Christmas, halfway through December, and it's 65 degrees is the high here today, which is the second time in a week we will have broken a record for the temperature in upstate New York. Our economy has suffered as a result. Tourism this time of year and heading into the winter, people come up here to ski. People are heading up to the Adirondacks and all around upstate New York to participate in snowboarding and winter activities. They can't do that if there's no snow. So our economy is suffering as a result of climate change. We had record flooding, which directly impacted homeowners and businesses in our community this whole summer. And the debilitating mosquitoes resulted in the inability to go outside, which in a global pandemic is really difficult to maintain. So there is so much that we are experiencing here that is very much affecting our economy, affecting the quality of our lives in a very negative way. But it's difficult to address these issues when the cost of becoming renewable, when the cost of buying an electric vehicle, of buying heat pumps, of getting solar panels, it's not necessarily the most affordable thing for people to do. And the financial packages, the financial structures that are in place for other sectors of the energy economy are not for renewables. This bill, the Build Back Better bill, the Build Back Better Act, why we're all here today, would allow us to create these financial structures so that people are able to go and get heat pumps, so that they're able to buy electric vehicles and afford them, the tax credits and other financial incentives that would allow for residents, homeowners, businesses, governments, municipalities to take advantage of these technologies. So I would like to strongly encourage Senator Schumer to pass this bill, to bring this bill to a vote, because we need it in the town of Manlius, we need it in New York State, and we need it in communities around the country. So I'll turn it over to my next speaker, Alex. Thank you.
Thank you. There's two really important points, right? I was in LA yesterday where it was 44 degrees. So we can tell the disruption in our normal weather systems. And which brings us to our next guest here, who is a former meteorologist, Delegate Jim Barak in West Virginia.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, I got something in common with both of you. I grew up in LA and I used to live in Syracuse there. I used to do the weather on Channel 5 up there. So yes, I'm Jim Barrack, a delegate from the 36th district here in Kanawha County. I've been a friend of Senator Manchin for several years. Joe is a great guy, and I hope he really comes around and sees the importance of how necessary this is for our state here. Because for one thing, our infrastructure needs a lot of help. And this is going to bring in a lot of money for that. It's going to help create jobs in the clean energy sector. And this is not overnight. This is going to be a gradual change. We are an energy state, but coal is disappearing over time. And so we need to get in on the ground floor of getting these new good paying energy jobs and bring them in here and stimulate our economy. And so this is going to be a tremendous bill for West Virginia. I see great things coming out of this for this state. And so I'm definitely in favor of it. And I hope we can get everyone to get in agreement with it and get this happening. And so as a delegate, that's why I really support it, because it would be so great for our state economically and just for our future. But as a meteorologist, as you mentioned, I'm very concerned about this as well, because climate change is becoming more and more evident. From 2010 to 2020, West Virginia experienced 11 extreme weather events, including a massive flooding in 2016, which we're still seeing communities that haven't recovered from. We had a big derecho a few years before that. And so we're seeing more and more of these events. And of course, I want to draw everyone's attention to the huge event we had just last weekend, where we had major tornadoes. We're talking EF3 and stronger tornadoes in Kentucky and Tennessee. These don't happen this time of year. When those do happen, it's more in the plains states and down in the southeast. But to have that happen in Western Kentucky this time of year is a sure sign that things are just not the way we're used to them being. And in fact, here in Charleston last Saturday, the temperature was 71 at 7 in the morning. That almost tied a record high for the date at 7 in the morning. That is just not very common around this area. And it's an indication that the climate is changing, that we need to do something about it. And so by getting this Build Back Better Act in effect and bringing clean energy jobs to the region, in fact, to the whole country, to the whole world, we can save our planet, we can create new jobs, we can reduce the cost of energy with renewable sources. And so I'm very excited about it. So again, I'm pleading to Senator Manchin to see the good in this, to come on over and vote for it. And let's get West Virginia and the rest of the country in line with this. And I see great things coming from this bill, and that it's going to take us into the future. Thank you.
Yeah, the benefits coming from this bill are one of the wonderful highlights of it, right? How it's actually affecting the average person all the way to structurally helping fix the issue of climate change. Because we had $22 billion storms last year, and we're on track, unfortunately, this year to do something similar. So it's absolutely important that we encourage everyone. So thank you. We'd like to now move within the state to Council Member Dana McKinney.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Well, I'm coming to speak as far as for the people, like the change that it will definitely mean as well, and the weather, just everything, and the changes that it could be, the jobs. We are looking for more jobs here. We have a lot of empty spaces that we're hoping to fill. The Build Back Better bill would definitely help us over here, especially by us being biochemical plants and things like that. These things are very important, especially for the areas that these that are being affected and the people in the areas. So we definitely ask Senator Manchin to think about it. Think about the people that he swore to serve and protect. Think about the people that he probably haven't have a chance to hear from, and how it can affect them, especially with the climate change. It's very, very important. Our young children is very important. It affects our future. And, we need the education, we need the resources, and we need the help. And we asking for him to really think about the people of West Virginia, the people that he swore and to protect and serve. And I mean, Jim and Caitlin basically said everything I was going to say, so I really didn't want to double back off of what they said, but you know, everything they said is absolutely right. It's very, very important. And I just want him to think about the children. As a councilwoman here in Charleston, and you see, you know, how much is of a lot of things are being affected, especially with Corona and everything, but that also is another part of it. And if it's something that we can do little by little to kind of better our areas and our communities, especially for the people, and think about the people and really make a decision that's going to be beneficial, like Jim said, not just for West Virginia, but for the world. Thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely. In the end, it really is about protecting our communities and people and improving the lives of our children. And it's a tough area where you're doing it, right? With 70% of your community lives within 3 miles of a chemical facility. And we've seen in other states, like Missouri, where radioactive waste is spread when it floods. So it's this infrastructure that provides in this legislation will help mitigate those disasters. Now we'd like to head up to New York. So Council Member Robin Wild and Brighton in New York.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Robin Wild, and I'm a council member, as Alex said, in the town of Brighton in Monroe County, New York, where it is a balmy 60 degrees today. And I'm a member of the Leadership Council of Elected Officials to Protect New York. And I guess what I want to emphasize is that the COVID-19 pandemic has hit already vulnerable communities in New York State extremely hard. And just last night, I visited Queens, in some of the zip codes most affected by COVID-19 deaths in our nation, where the community suffers from particular vulnerability to COVID because of a legacy of pollution from local fossil fuel energy plants. The Build Back Better Act offers us an historic opportunity to not only reparatively address the disparities that we've witnessed among underserved communities who have been unfairly forced to shoulder a disproportionate burden of our failure to curb greenhouse gas emissions, but also to build safer, more resilient communities that serve everyone. The Build Back Better Act will also bring much needed economic stimulus by creating well-compensated jobs in the green energy sector and a civilian climate corps that will expand to access renewable energy, weatherized buildings, install electric vehicle charging stations. And in my own home community in Brighton, we've been expanding the market for green energy infrastructure by implementing Monroe County's first automatic opt-in community choice aggregation program with 100% renewable energy supply. And we're additionally in the process of creating an automatic opt-in community solar aggregation program. So here we are busy creating the demand for renewable energy, but now we need the help of the federal government in upgrading the electrical infrastructure to support our efforts. We need the crucial investments in renewable energy infrastructure that the Build Back Better Act promises. Our communities were blindsided by COVID-19, but the climate crisis is a challenge that we can meet, but only if we commit to critical investments like those in the Build Back Better Act, and working in conjunction with the bipartisan infrastructure law to prepare our communities for rising seas, droughts, and storms, as well as protect the nation's public lands, and that in effect will safeguard lives. Because I think in the end, the Build Back Better Act is about safeguarding our livelihoods and our very lives. Carbon pollution and reduction in air quality pose major risks to public health and cause premature death, especially in our communities of color and lower income communities that are already most impacted by systemic racism and most in need of environmental justice reform. So I'm imploring Senator Schumer not to miss this opportunity to pass the Build Back Better Act and to begin to right the injustices of the past by investing in our underserved and most vulnerable communities who are on the front lines of this climate crisis.
Yeah. Because it's those on the front lines that are going to be affected the most. And unfortunately, historically, that's always been the case, at least in this country, right? So it's unbelievably important we address that. Otherwise, a lot of people, as we've mentioned here, are going to be dramatically affected in a very negative manner. But the wonderful thing is we have your example, right? The community solar and other renewable energy projects. We can help everyone on the front lines, one of the greatest too, by doing these projects. So it's inspiring to see what you're doing. So now we'd like to go, I believe, up the river to legislator William Reinhardt. And we all do the same thing and put ourselves on mute when we start talking.
Trying to follow the rules.
No matter how much we do.
Hello, yes, I'm Bill Reinhardt. I'm the Albany County legislator for a part of Albany County. And I had a professional career at the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, where I did energy and environmental research, mostly with industry, but also with buildings in general. And I am also a member of the New York State Leadership Council for elected officials to protect New York, or America, sorry. I don't want to repeat what others have already said, but I do want to say that given my background, I am more than delighted to see that the real focus of this act, the Build Back Better Act, is American jobs for American workers. I mentioned at NYSERDA, I did R&D with industry. And I can't tell you the frustration that I saw over my long career to see jobs lost to overseas manufacturing. And frankly, some jobs are lost to automation. It's not all overseas jobs, but this bill and what we're doing to fight climate change is a generational opportunity to recover jobs in America to address the compelling need of the climate emergency that we face. What I do want to say is that from my perspective, having been at NYSERDA and in New York, I see that we are already starting to do under our state legislation some of the things that this bill is trying to do at the national level, such as creating a smart grid, decarbonizing buildings, and encouraging electric vehicles. I cannot understress, or I cannot overstress, I guess, the impact that these measures in the bill will have to move us forward in these areas. And I'm already seeing some of the changes happening in New York that could happen nationwide if we pass this federal legislation. Just one example, I'm involved with a local Heat Smart campaign, which is to install heat pumps in buildings, residential buildings, small businesses. And also I'm promoting community solar through some of my volunteer work. The benefits are already starting to happen. The demand is there. One of the problems we have, if you want to call it a problem, with the Heat Smart campaign is there's so much demand that the HVAC contractors are working their tails off to meet the demand. The incentives in this bill, the federal bill, will fundamentally enable everyone to invest and choose to go towards heat pumps. In other words, for me, with my income, it's already economical. But for people in lower income brackets, the incentives, as was mentioned previously, are critical to making that reachable for the entire population. And of course, the climate problem is a problem that has to be addressed by everybody. It's not like landing someone on the moon. Everyone, the whole society, the whole economy has to change and move in that direction. The last thing I really want to focus on is not really energy, but it's one of the things that I really see about this bill that resonates with me and some of the things I did as a younger man. When I got married, my honeymoon was down in the Blue Ridge Parkway. And that's when I learned about all the amazing things that were built during the Great Depression, when the Civilian Conservation Corps was established by FDR and his folks. And, from basically Virginia all the way down to North Carolina, maybe a little bit of touching in West Virginia, not a whole lot, but there were these wonderful construction projects that really made tourism, local tourism, much more attractive. And I see this as a major benefit of this bill, that we could see a rebirth of local tourism across upstate New York, across West Virginia, throughout Appalachia, which, by the way, most of you may not realize, but being a student at Cornell at one time, long ago, I learned that the Appalachian region actually went from upstate New York, like Tompkins County, Cornell was at sort of the northern end of it, all the way down into North Carolina, even I guess parts of Mississippi and Alabama. That whole region was fundamentally changed by infrastructure investments back then. And it can happen again if we make the right choices to move forward for the economy that the world needs, that we need, and we can benefit from here in America. The last thing I want to say is the single most important thing we can do to fight child poverty in America is to extend the child tax credit, which is part of this bill. That is the single most significant thing Congress has done in the last 50 years to affect childhood poverty. And we can do that again by extending it in this bill. And I think that if you wanted to put your finger on one fundamental thing we can do that would make a major impact, that would be it. So this bill is loaded with wonderful things for the environment, for people, for jobs. I just hope that Schumer and Manchin can come to an agreement to move forward with this. Thanks.
Thank you. Well stated. Small worlds. That's where you ended up having your celebration vacation.
Yep.
Well, thank you, everyone. We're now going to transition into the Q&A section. And if you're a member of the media, feel free to put questions in the chat, which I see a number of them have already done. Or if you'd like to be brought into the conversation directly, you can raise your hand and I can bring you into the video section of it. And we are going to go to our first question. Delegate Barack, what are the top climate-related priorities in your district in West Virginia? And there's two questions regarding that and another one for Councilmember McKinney. What are the top climate-related priorities in Charleston? So we'll start with the delegate and then head over to Charleston.
Yeah, the top climate priorities. I'm not sure what specifically they're asking about as far as what we need to address with our climate, or obviously we're facing the same things here that everyone else is. That with global warming, what the problem for West Virginia is that, well, with temperatures going up, we're going to see more bouts of severe weather. West Virginia is very prone to flooding. And of course, we had the floods in 2016, so I'm very concerned about that. Also, if we see continued warmth, that alters our tree line. This is a very beautiful state. We've got trees all over the place. So of course, we have a logging industry that's going to disrupt that. Wildlife gets affected. We really bank a lot on our nature here. Tourism is a very big economic factor here in West Virginia. In fact, we just opened the New River Gorge National Park, which is a big success. So we want to keep our natural beauty about that. And because of the fact that we are a big coal producer, that's starting to fade out. It would be nicer if we started to work with clean energy and do less harm to the environment for the whole country. If we start generating more electricity with clean methods, I think that would also be great. So we have a lot of factors that we're very climate dependent here, and of course we do have a couple of ski resorts. And if we see warmer temperatures, that hurts the snowfall, things like that, and of course that upsets the ecology of the area. So I think just in general, we've got a lot of irons in the fire as far as addressing climate change. And I think, we want to keep our state beautiful, and we want to be one of the ground floor influencers as far as getting clean energy. And I think that would help us out as far as bringing in jobs. So I think those are the basic climate issues that I'm thinking about at this time. I hope I answered that right. If not, be more specific and I'll go back.
Yeah, John, if you have any follow-ups to that, just put it in the chat and we'll definitely get to them. All right, council member?
Yes, just like Jim said, I'm in Charleston, and flooding is a big issue. A lot of families lost a lot with the last flood that we just had recently. I believe it was about, I think last year or beginning of the year. But we had a real bad flood where people basements, I mean, they lost things that they can't get back, you know. So that is definitely one of the biggest issues that we are facing here in Charleston. The climate is the
Yeah, thank you. And one of the most deadly. All right, so this is for everyone. How will the BBBA protect workers as we transition from a fossil fuel-based economy to a green energy one?
Alex, I'd be happy to
Great, please jump
share
in.
with this one. So in the United States, in the energy sector, there has long been questions about how folks who are working in the coal industry, for example, how we are putting them out of work by transitioning to a clean energy economy. So by advocating for this bill and elements of this bill, providing job training and opportunities for folks who work in those sectors to transition to new jobs in the clean energy economy. There have been, and I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but perhaps one of my colleagues could pull that up for us while we're addressing this question. The growth in clean energy economy has added exponentially to jobs across this country year over year over year, and it continues to do so. So by structuring this bill and all of the different programs and initiatives that would come out of it, focusing on job training, focusing on transitioning those folks into jobs in the clean energy economy is critically important. One of the local nonprofits that I work with here in Central New York, Alliance for a Green Economy, they have been talking about this for years. How do we transition these folks into clean energy jobs? We're already seeing that happening. There is no job growth in the fossil fuel economy, in the dirty energy economy, but there is in solar. As William mentioned, the installers for his Heat Smart campaign are so busy that they're working around the clock. So how do we help these folks to transition to jobs in that economy? Through job training, by directing funds to those types of programs and initiatives that are currently in place and have been for years around the country.
Yeah, the reality is that the economy worldwide is shifting to clean energy, and Bloomberg's estimated by 2050 that 74% or 75% of the energy will be clean energy. The question is, 2050 is too long a time if we want to address the real concerns of climate change and help everyone. All right, so Legislator Reinhardt, he has a comment for this one. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to add to this issue and discuss a few things that I have either seen personally or read about. It was just mentioned that the HVAC contractors are very busy. And these are folks who obviously have a history, many of them, of working in natural gas infrastructure. In other words, gas piping, gas boilers, installing that kind of fossil fuel-based equipment. As the industry transitions over to electric heat pumps, some of these people are doing the transition themselves. In some cases, what we see is new people in the business who were not dealing with the gas boilers and gas furnaces and gas lines in the past. They came in as electrical engineers and electrically focused training. But the point I want to make is that for this group of, I'll call it the plumbers, the pipe fitters, the people who were involved in the old gas infrastructure, the geothermal markets are an opportunity in the new renewable energy space to for them to work, because you're still doing a lot of hydronic, meaning hot water heating and cooling systems. And so there are opportunities for these people to basically not totally change their industry, not totally change their focus on residential buildings, but to simply make some changes. And now they have a lot of the skill set they already need to transition into geothermal work. And by geothermal work, I want to stress really there are two types of geothermal. And this part of this comment really relates more to West Virginia than New York State. One of the papers that or presentations I did at a community college several years ago was about renewable energy potentials of all kinds. And one of the things I found, which I thought was fascinating, was a study by somebody, I think it was a National Renewable Energy Lab. I can't cite the reference right now, but they said in West Virginia, there is more potential from geothermal hot rocks than there is BTUs in coal. So in other words, the thermal energy that you could harvest from deep drilling, not the geothermal like you put in a home where you put some pipes out in the backyard to recover energy from the ground, but I'm talking about drilling down into deep rock. And if you think about this technology, so here we have this potential where the thermal energy potential is huge. How do you do this? Well, the technologies for this come from the oil and gas drilling industry. So here's another example of where you could take the technology that we've developed in the oil and gas industry for deep drilling and use it to access geothermal potentials to essentially generate power in power plants. So when you hear the term geothermal, you have to remember there are two kinds. There's that deep drilling where you bring up power or thermal energy for power production. And then there's also the geothermal that we could put in our backyard to heat our building with a geothermal heat pump. Both of those technologies basically use skill sets that are traditional skill sets in the trades, and we can adapt them. But also, I would say that one of the elements here is places like in my area, Hudson Valley Community College has a training program, an education program designed for solar installation, and that would be the kind of thing where community colleges really all over the country should be training people on this kind of technology. And young people are very interested in it. Another thing I think that's relevant here is I saw a survey just the other day that most people in the oil and gas business, meaning the workers, would love to transition to a job where they are part of the renewable energy economy. They like the idea of being involved in the future. And so the question and the challenge for government people is, okay, how do we provide that transition as seamlessly as possible? How do we provide the training? How do we provide the incentives? How do we create the markets? And guess what? That's what the Build Back Better Act does. So we have this opportunity to actually, head on address the needs and both of the workers and the interests of the workers and the needs of our society. And so I see real opportunity here if we make the right investments to facilitate that movement of people from the old industries to the new. Now, I think, we have to address the problem. What is the problem? The biggest problem here, I think, is people a little bit younger than me who have been doing this business forever, and they're getting near retirement. Let's say they're in their 50s. Are they going to go back to the community college to learn the new trade? I don't know. To me, that's the biggest challenge, is how do we address some of the older workers who may feel like it's too late for them to make the career change. I have a son-in-law who kind of made it this career change in his 40s, but now I'm talking about people who are a little bit older. And I think that's really where we have the biggest challenge, and we have to figure out at each kind of community level what works best for them. And so we really need the engagement at the grassroots to figure out how do we best go about this. But I do think that the support of union jobs is critical in this bill, to create that career path for people and to keep people or help them return to the middle class if they might have been there in the past and have struggled. this is part of the solution. And I think what President Biden has done here is shown that for the first time in perhaps 40 years, we have a president who seems to care more about the workers than anything else, more about the workers than the investment community, more about the workers than what Wall Street says is good. And that's why I think this is a fundamental transition that we're trying to accomplish here that would be better for everyone.
Great.
I'm done.
And it really highlights how this is not a technology problem. This is a political problem that we can absolutely solve, right? Even in California, they're looking at geothermal and mining lithium at the same time to create the lithium for the batteries we're going to need for electric cars, so you don't destroy the earth while getting it. So there's amazing technology solutions that exist right now. It's just the barrier is our political procedures and policies. And this is one of the reasons why the Bbba is so important, right? Because it's removing those barriers and providing the capital to create those markets. So speaking of which, there in a number of different states, Bbba is going to affect it in different ways. So we have a question regarding that. Are current state plans going to need Bbba? How compatible is this with your state-led efforts? So another way, you need to go around and see in your local community or state, how is the Bbba going to affect or improve your community? We can start with Delegate Brock.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, I think that of all the states, I mean, West Virginia, our infrastructure is very bad here. We really need to see things repaired here. I mean, we've got a lot of water leakage in our lines. We're having problems with that. Our roads are bad. We need to fix those up. And of course, you know, we've been dependent on coal for so many years, and that has been dropping off gradually over time. And so all of this is going to really benefit West Virginia. I mean, I think that this is something that was tailor-made for us, because replacing those as the New York legislator was commenting about, Mr. Reinhardt was commenting about, that we're seeing that these people are, you know, getting to retirement age, and these jobs are not going to be there for the new generation. So we need to start changing our mindset and getting people into doing clean energy, because clean energy, once we do clean energy, that's going to be around forever, you know, and that will be something. Renewable energy is something that's going to take us into the next however long we're here. And so that's very exciting about that. So West Virginia, this is every part of this plan. And of course, we do have issues with poverty. So the child tax credit is also very important for us on that. So I don't see any way that this is not going to benefit us. So that's why I'm very excited about it. And I hope that everyone can come to terms together and get this passed.
And I will add, from the New York standpoint, New York has taken some great strides in terms of addressing the climate crisis. We've implemented the Climate Leadership and Community Reinvestment Act in New York State, and it's set very aggressive greenhouse gas emissions reduction goal for our state. But we face challenges as well in terms of meeting those goals without additional investments in the infrastructure to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels and transition to a new renewable energy economy. So without federal support that's provided in the Build Back Better Act, in New York State, we'll have trouble doing the heavy lift without economic harm to those communities who have already been so directly impacted by the climate crisis.
Anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, I can
I
add
can
something
add-
here.
Oh.
Go ahead, Kayla.
Thanks, William. So prior to the current jobs and roles that I have now, I was the project coordinator for the Solarize CNY campaign. So I'm helping Central New York residents to take advantage of rooftop and backyard solar, which was really my first foray into climate action work. And I would travel around the 5-county region of Central New York and explain how In New York State, there was a grant that would help to pay for a $5,000 grant and then a New York State tax credit that would help to offset the cost of going solar. And then I would talk about the federal investment tax credit. So none of these states, no matter what our state policies are acting in a silo. We're not an island. We need the federal government's support. Everything that is pieced together by New York State residents or by business owners, elected officials, and community leaders, New York State needs the federal government's support. These financial packages, in the federal investment tax credit was reduced, and that's been going down for a couple of years now, which has had an impact on renewable energy investment in New York State. I think that New York State's doing great things, as my colleague Robin has already indicated, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be supporting that at the federal level. It would only help to round out what our state is doing as a climate leader.
Absolutely. Legislator Reinhardt.
What I'd like to add here is, like Caitlin, I've been involved, and I still am involved with solarized campaigns here in the Capital District. And I'm also been involved with the community choice aggregation effort, like Robin mentioned, they're doing in Monroe County now. What I'd like to do very, very quickly is kind of give you, here are like 4 major things that consumers can do to reduce their carbon footprint. Put solar panels on their roof, sign up for community choice aggregation, make their buildings their homes more energy efficient, buy electric vehicles. Maybe I said that already. Anyway, my point is CCA does not cost a lot of capital. Community solar, where you're taking power from a solar farm nearby, does not cost you any capital. But for the rooftop solar and for heat pumps, whether it's geothermal or air source heat pumps, it takes capital to make that change in your home. And in New York State, we have our climate bill is saying, basically put in bold terms, we have to address environmental justice issues and communities of need as we move forward to address climate. Well, what we're finding already in New York is that even the incentives that the state has, as Caitlin alluded to, for rooftop solar, there's the state credit, there's a NYSERDA rebate, and there's a federal tax credit. Those credits, they work for me, but they don't work for somebody who doesn't have any capital. They don't work for some people who are at the lower economic areas of our society. So that if we're going to have them go green, we have to understand that the financial incentive package, including all state and local incentives, has to be enough to allow them to get over that capital hurdle. We're not talking about whether these things pay themselves back. They do. It's just that upfront capital cost that's the barrier for the geothermal, the heat pumps, the rooftop solar. Not barriers for CCA, not barriers for community solar, but for some of the things that we need to do in our society, there is that barrier. And that's where this federal law is so critical. That what we've seen in New York is, with our incentives and with our activism in the space, we still have an income issue. In other words, the lower income parts of our communities cannot put together the capital to make that investment, whereas other parts of our economic strata can. And so this federal law is critical for allowing us to get everyone to move in this direction.
Hey, Councilmember McKinney, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes, and like Jim was saying, as far as the fracture here in West Virginia, like we have a lot going on, and then it seems like nothing is being done. So we definitely need help from the federal government, and a better act bill would definitely help us, like with jobs, the chemical plants, education. There's a lot of things, and people here definitely are not educated with what's going on around. We had just recently been talking about the solar panels for the rooftops for houses and things like that. So it's a lot of things that community people are very unaware of, even with the climate change and things that's happening with climate change. So With this, it'll give us more resources. It'll help us to build more resources for these small communities, so people could be aware of what's going on, help us with our flooding issue. So yes, we definitely hope that everybody could come together and agree that this is good for all over, but West Virginia definitely would benefit on a lot of levels from this bill, from this act.
Thank you. We have two questions. There's a national narrative regarding inflation and the piece of legislation. So the question summarized together is essentially, will Bbba add to inflation? Delegate. See if I can unmute you.
Sorry, I did the cardinal sin there, sorry. I read that people are all worried about inflation. I don't think this is going to be a driver for inflation from what I understand about it. For one thing, this is an investment. And I think that you always get paid back for an investment. And one thing we have to look at is that in the past few years, we approved a huge tax cut for the wealthiest Americans that added $2 trillion to the deficit and was not paid for. And it seems that people weren't that worried about that, but now they're starting to get concerned about this. This is an investment. I don't see it adding to inflation because it is paid for through a raise in taxes for some of the groups that got this prior tax cut. So I don't really see that being a problem. And again, the tax cut did not help this country economically, but this will. This is something that we're going to invest in jobs and building our infrastructure, which is all good, and looking to the future. We're going to look to the future with clean energy, and this is pointing us in the right direction. It's something that's way overdue. And so I don't think that's an issue at all. I think that, again, an investment can only be good for us.
Yeah. Actually, Moody's Analytics and the top rating organization came out with a report recently saying it would not add to the nation's inflation. So backs up what you're saying absolutely as an investment that will actually help the local communities and the nation as a whole.
Can I add just a couple of comments, Alex?
Please.
So the kind of outside of renewable energy and clean energy, when you're thinking about how families have been, how they've seen their wages grow or not grow over the last several decades or the last few decades, we simply have not kept pace with inflation, with the cost of goods. The minimum wage has not caught up or stayed even remotely close to where it would needed to have been for families to continue to afford goods and services in this country. So I certainly looked this up as well. It appears that even if you believed that it might add to inflation, it would be so marginal, tenths of a percent. And then there's research to show that it wouldn't add to inflation at all. And I really think that that is the wrong focus. We need to be helping families in this country. We need to be, in this bill, we would do that. There are funds to help make childcare significantly more affordable. I'm a single mom of 2 little kids, one daughter in middle school and one in elementary school. And childcare was something that was a drain on my finances over these last several years. It's extremely expensive. So that would help families to have more money in the bank. Healthcare and prescription drug costs, as we're all well aware, are astronomical. This bill would help to address those concerns. And then kind of bringing it back to the main area of focus here in our press conference today, by investing in clean renewable energy, that would help to reduce the costs of energy for families across the country. And by creating packages, as William mentioned, that would allow families to participate in the clean energy economy without needing to have had the tax liability to take advantage of the tax credit, will open the doors for so many people to start saving money. I have solar panels on the roof of this house, and I own a fully electric Ford, and it was that upfront investment, but now I save a lot of money. Other families should have that same opportunity. So inflation is an issue in this country right now that we all agree on, but this bill would not add to inflation. If it did, it would be marginal. And you're really missing the focus of this bill that would help families to save money, help to address how inflation and inflationary pressures have affected families across the country, while working towards climate mitigation and adaptation. Just, we won't have a planet to be on if we don't do this. So I think that inflation and focusing on that, they're just trying to get people fired up with an issue that's a non-issue.
Yeah. Not to mention the healthcare costs that are avoided by the pollution. I mean, 300,000 people die earlier just in the United States because of air pollution. So just we have time for maybe two quick ones. Obviously, Senator Manchin has been the focus of this legislation. So for our West Virginia folks, what do you think it would take to encourage Senator Manchin to do the right thing and vote for this legislation?
All right, want me to pick up on
Well,
that one?
I would say for us as a, oh, I'm sorry, Jim.
Oh, no, you go right ahead, Deanna. Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you, Jim. I was just saying, like, Senator Manchin has been very disappointed to hear how he has been making decisions that has not seemed to have West Virginia in their best interest. I mean, we have been patiently, waiting for him to come around. And this right here is another, like, it seems like every time he turns around, there's just something that he's hesitant on that we feel that is helpful for us. And I just wish that he would stop and think about the people that this could really help in this state.
I think you got muted.
That he have people that voted for him, trusted in him, and believed in him. And we expect him to come through for us. And we expect him to put us first. Think about us and how this can really help us and build this small communities. Like, we are crying for attention, we're crying for help, and we need him to stand up and be the voice for us like we voted him in there to be. And I expect him to do the right thing because we are suffering here in West Virginia and he knows that. So I don't understand why he be hesitant to help us to get a leg up on any level.
Thank you. Want me to pick up on that?
Please do.
Yes. Yes, and I just want to start off by saying that I love Joe Manchin. I mean, I've been a big fan of his for years. And the one thing about Joe Manchin is he's always been his own person. But he always comes around to, I think, making the right choice for West Virginia. So I think he just needs to be shown that this is going to be a good bill for the state. I think that when everything is out there, when he gets the best deal that he thinks is possible, he's going to come around. And I only hope that, because we really need this. And I want to see him continue his legacy of being a champion for West Virginia. And so I'm very hopeful that he'll come around, that he'll see that this is a good bill. And he just needs to be sure that it's not going to be too expensive, which, as we talked about, I don't think it will be. I think he's just kind of trying to be the voice of reason. But this is the time right now. We need to say, okay, this is the time to make the decision. Point us the right way. Let's do the right thing. So I'm hopeful that Senator Manchin will do the right thing, and I'm counting on it.
Thank you. We are at time now. I apologize if we did not get to all the questions here, but feel free to send us an email, give us a call, or put a question in the chat, and we'll ensure that we can connect you and get that answered. As we have any follow-up, we'll send the press release out that will have a recording of the press conference as well. So again, thank you everyone so much for taking the time to join us here from West Virginia and New York, and we'll look forward to continuing the conversation.